Have you ever woken up with the feeling that you're about to be crushed, even though nothing has actually happened yet? God, are you actually there? I'm not a pastor. I'm not a worship leader anymore. I'm not the guy who stands on stage with his hands raised and his eyes closed, looking like he's got it all figured out. I'm just a 42-year-old civil engineer named Min, sitting in a dusty pickup truck outside a construction site in the dead of a Hanoi winter, watching my own reflection in the rearview mirror and not recognizing the face staring back at me. The bridge overpass project. 3 months behind schedule. The contractor called me yesterday and used words I won't repeat here, but the summary was this: finish it by the deadline or kiss the contract goodbye. And the contract is everything. It's the mortgage. It's my daughter's school fees. It's the fragile scaffolding holding up what's left of my family's security. My phone buzzed. A text from my wife. Can you come home early? She's at 39 degrees again. I don't want to go to the hospital alone. My 6-year-old daughter, has been running this fever on and off for 2 weeks now. The doctors say it's just a virus, just a stubborn virus, just wait it out, just give her fluids, just. But every just feels like a tiny hammer driving another nail into my chest. Because I'm her father. And I'm supposed to fix things. I'm an engineer. Fixing things is literally what I do. But I can't fix a virus. I can't fix a deadline. I can't fix the fact that I'm sitting in this truck at 6:15 in the morning, and my hands are shaking so badly I can barely type a response. On my way, I typed back. A lie. I had at least 3 hours of work before I could even think about leaving. I put the phone down and opened the glove compartment to find a pen, and that's when I saw it. The old leather-bound Bible. The corners worn down to the cardboard. The gold lettering on the cover faded to a ghost of its former self. My father gave me this Bible. He died 6 years ago, cancer, the kind that moves fast and takes no prisoners, and this was the one thing he wanted me to have. I hadn't opened it in 5 years. Not since I stopped leading worship. Not since I stopped believing that any of those promises actually applied to people like me. But this morning, for reasons I still can't explain, I pulled it out. The leather felt cold and foreign in my hands. It smelled like dust and old paper and something else, my father's cigarettes, maybe, from all those years ago when he'd sit on the porch and read the Psalms out loud while the sun went down. I flipped it open randomly, the way you do when you're not really looking for anything but you're desperate for something. Isaiah 54 verse 17. The verse was underlined in red ink. My father's handwriting in the margin, barely legible now: this is for you, son. Don't forget. No weapon forged against you will prevail, and you will refute every tongue that accuses you. This is the heritage of the servants of the Lord, and this is their vindication from me, declares the Lord. I read it once. Then again. Then a third time, slower, my lips moving but no sound coming out. And then my eyes started burning, and before I knew what was happening, a tear dropped onto the page, right on top of the word prevail, smudging the ink just a little. I closed the Bible. I looked at my reflection in the rearview mirror again, the hollow eyes, the unshaven jaw, the shoulders that looked like they were carrying the entire weight of that unfinished bridge. And I said it out loud, in the empty cab of that pickup truck, with the fog pressing against the windows and the drills still thudding in the distance. God, if you're really protecting me, why am I still so afraid? I waited. No voice from heaven. No sudden warmth in my chest. No dramatic breakthrough. Just the silence of a winter morning and the distant sound of a city waking up and the cold coffee still sitting on my desk at home. But here's what I'm learning, and here's why I'm telling you this story even though I have no idea how it ends yet. 5 years is a long time to go without praying. It's a long time to go without opening the Bible. It's a long time to let the silence build up until you're not even sure if you remember how to talk to God anymore. And when you finally do open your mouth, when you finally do whisper those words into the emptiness, you expect something. You expect the heavens to part. You expect a sign. You expect the kind of dramatic encounter that makes you want to stand up and testify in church on Sunday. But sometimes, the first prayer after 5 years of silence doesn't sound like victory. It sounds like a question. It sounds like doubt. It sounds like a man sitting in a pickup truck, crying over a page his dead father underlined, asking a God he's not sure he believes in anymore why his hands are still shaking. And maybe, just maybe, that's exactly the kind of prayer God has been waiting to hear. Because here's the thing about the promises in Isaiah. They weren't written for people who have it all together. They weren't written for the worship leaders on stage with their hands raised and their faith intact. They were written for exiles. For people who had lost everything. For people who looked at their lives and saw nothing but ruins and wondered if God had forgotten their address. I'm not going to stand here and tell you that everything changed in that moment. It didn't. The deadline is still looming. My daughter is still sick. My marriage is still strained under the weight of all the things we don't say to each other anymore. But something shifted in that truck this morning. Something cracked open, just a little, like the first ray of light through a door you thought had been sealed shut forever. I don't know where this goes from here. I don't know if I'll open that Bible again tomorrow. I don't know if I'll ever stand on a stage and lead worship again. I closed my eyes in that pickup truck, fog pressing against the windows like the weight pressing against my chest, and I tried to pray. First time in 5 years. My lips moved, but the words felt like they were falling into a void, like shouting into a canyon and not even getting an echo back. Just silence. Thick, suffocating silence. And instead of peace, something else rose up in me. Something uglier. Disappointment. The kind that burns in your throat and makes your fists clench without you even realizing it. Because here's the thing nobody tells you about coming back to faith after you've walked away: sometimes the silence feels worse than before. At least when you're not praying, you're not expecting anything. But when you finally break, when you finally whispered, "God, are you there?" and the only answer is the distant sound of a drill and the fog getting thicker. It messes with your head. Did you leave me? Is that what this is? 5 years of silence from my end, and now silence from yours. Is this payback? Because if it is, I can't do this. I can't. This is the mirror moment. The part of the story where I have to stop and ask you to look at your own life. How many times have you prayed and felt nothing? How many times have you showed up, genuinely showed up, heart cracked open, tears on your face, and the heavens felt like brass? How many times have you whispered, "God, where are you?" into the darkness and gotten nothing but your own breath echoing back? It's the place where faith either dies or gets forged into something real. The silence of God is not the absence of God. My phone rang. I looked down at the screen. It was the foreman, the guy who signs the checks, the guy who holds my entire career in his calloused hands. I picked up. "Min, you got 48 hours to finish those revised drawings." "I'm not asking. I'm telling. If I don't have them on my desk by Wednesday morning, I'll find someone who can deliver. Understood?" No hello. No how's your daughter. No acknowledgement that I've been working 16-hour days for 3 weeks straight. Just the cold, hard bottom line. "Understood," I said, and he hung up before I could say anything else. Before I could even process that, my phone buzzed again. Text message from the hospital. "Mr. Min, your daughter's condition has worsened. We need to admit her for monitoring. Pneumonia is progressing. Please come to the pediatric ward as soon as possible." 2 fires. 2 directions. And me standing in the middle, feeling like I was being torn apart at the seams. I want you to understand what that moment felt like. Imagine standing on a tightrope stretched. I want you to understand what that moment felt like. The ground beneath my feet had turned to sand, and every breath came shallow, like I was already falling. Imagine standing on a tightrope stretched across a canyon. Below you, nothing but rocks and darkness. Above you, nothing but gray sky. And the wind is blowing hard. And there's no net underneath you. No safety harness. No backup plan. Just you, the rope, and the very real possibility that one wrong step sends everything crashing down. That's where I was. Caught between a job that was slipping through my fingers and a daughter who needed her father. Caught between the pressure to provide and the pressure to be present. Caught between the man I was supposed to be and the man I feared I was becoming. The rope trembled under my weight, and I honestly didn't know which way I'd fall or if I'd have the strength to keep moving forward at all. Fear of failure and the terror of loss. And God was silent. Or so I thought. I got out of the truck. Slammed the door harder than I meant to. Started walking toward the side office, my boots crunching on gravel, my mind spinning through every worst-case scenario. What if I lose this contract? What if my daughter gets worse? What if my wife finally gives up on us, because I'm never home, never present, never the man she married? And that's when I saw him. A figure standing near the concrete mixer, hard hat on, clipboard in hand. At first I didn't recognize him. Then he turned around, and my stomach dropped. Hung. The guy I used to work with at my old firm. The guy I used to mock behind his back, calling him the Bible thumper, rolling my eyes when he'd bow his head over his lunch, making snide comments about his imaginary friend in the sky when I thought he couldn't hear me. The guy whose faith I treated like a punchline. And here he was. On my sight. Looking at me with eyes that carried no judgment, no I told you so, no trace of the contempt I had so freely dished out years ago. He walked over. Didn't say anything about Jesus. Didn't quote a verse. Didn't pull out a tract or ask me if I knew where I'd spend eternity. He just put his hand on my shoulder, heavy, warm, steady, and looked me right in the eyes. I know you're gassing yourself out, man. I've been there. I know what it feels like when the pressure doesn't let up and you're carrying everything alone and you're one bad phone call away from breaking. I didn't say anything. Couldn't. My throat was too tight. But I learned something when I hit my bottom, he said, his voice low and calm, like he was talking to a spooked animal. And I'm not gonna preach at you, because you don't need a sermon right now. You need the truth. So here it is, the pressure does not have final authority over your life. It feels like it does. It screams like it does. But it doesn't. There's a higher throne, Min. And the one who sits on it isn't panicking right now. That was the turning point. Not a miracle. Not a healing. Not a supernatural sign in the sky. Just a man who had every right to despise me, standing in the cold, speaking words that cut through the fog in my head like a blade. He told me something else, something I'd never understood back when I used to sit in church and hear the readings without really listening. He talked about the armor of God. Not as a metaphor for fighting your way out of trouble, but as something you put on so you can stand firm when trouble doesn't go away. The belt of truth, he said. The breastplate of righteousness. The shoes of peace. The shield of faith. None of that is for attacking your circumstances, Min. It's so you can hold your ground when everything around you is falling apart. Ephesians 6 doesn't say fight and win. It says stand. 4 times. Stand. 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 Hung didn't stay long. He squeezed my shoulder one more time, nodded toward the side office, and said, I'll handle the walkthrough. You go call your wife. I answered on the second ring. Everything okay? Is she? On oi. Her voice was shaking, but not the way it shakes when bad news is coming. This was different. This was the tremor of someone who's been holding their breath underwater for too long and just broke the surface. On oi, someone just called. The insurance company. They approved everything. Full coverage for the treatment. Everything. And also, she paused, and I heard her take a ragged breath. Your old boss called my phone. He said a new partner wants to extend your contract. 2 more years. 2 years, on. On. Are you there? Did you hear me? I heard her. But what I was really hearing, what was crashing over me like a wave I couldn't outrun, was the realization that none of this had just happened. Insurance approvals don't materialize in 10 minutes. Contract extensions don't get drafted during a coffee break. These things had been in motion for days. Maybe weeks. That's the thing about God's protection. It doesn't always arrive with sirens and flashing lights. Sometimes it moves in silence. Sometimes it's already on the way before you even know you need it. Sometimes the breakthrough lands in your lap and you realize it was set in motion back when you were still convinced you were alone. I hung up the phone and stood there in the cold, and for the first time in 5 years, I didn't feel the weight. Not because the circumstances had changed, my daughter was still sick, my job was still demanding, my life was still complicated, but because something in me had shifted. I had spent so long believing that God's silence meant His absence. I had mistaken the stillness of His work for the emptiness of abandonment. And now I understood, the weapons formed against you don't always look like catastrophe. Sometimes they look like exhaustion. Sometimes they look like the slow, grinding pressure of just getting through another day. Sometimes they look like fear that never lets up, anxiety that lives in your chest like a second heartbeat, the quiet voice that whispers you're on your own and nobody's coming to help. Those are weapons too. And they are just as real as any disaster. But here's the truth that Hung was trying to tell me, the truth I'm telling you now because I need you to hear it before you walk out that door and face whatever's waiting for you today. Isaiah 54 verse 17 declares that no weapon forged against you will prevail. Not some weapons. Not the obvious ones. Not just the ones you can see coming. All of them. Every single one. The weapon of fear. The weapon of exhaustion. The weapon of that deadline that's been stalking you for weeks. The weapon of the diagnosis you didn't want to hear. The weapon of the relationship that's falling apart no matter how hard you try. The weapon of the bank account that never seems to stretch far enough. The weapon of the doubt that makes you wonder if God even sees you anymore. None of them get the final word. Not because you're strong enough to fight them off. Not because you have enough faith. Not because you never waver. But because the one who made the promise is faithful to keep it, even when you're falling apart. I want you to sit with that for a second. Really sit with it. Because I know some of you are in your own pickup truck right now. Maybe it's a literal truck. Maybe it's a cubicle. Maybe it's a kitchen table covered in bills. Maybe it's a hospital waiting room where you've been sitting for hours, watching the clock, praying prayers that feel like they're bouncing off the ceiling. You've been carrying the weight for so long you've forgotten what it feels like to breathe without it. You've been fighting so hard you've forgotten there's another option besides fighting. Stand. That's the option. Stand. Not because standing is easy. Standing is one of the hardest things you'll ever do. Standing means staying put when every instinct screams at you to run. Standing means trusting when you can't see. Standing means believing that God is working in the dark, even when the dark is all you've known for a long, long time. So here's what I'm asking you to do. Not as a pastor. Not as someone who has it all figured out. But as a guy who was sitting in a truck 3 hours ago, convinced he was alone, only to discover that God had been moving mountains while he was busy doubting. Write this in the comments. Not as a magic formula. Not as a chant that makes your problems disappear. But as a prophetic act of faith, a declaration that you're aligning yourself with the truth even if your emotions haven't caught up yet. Right, I am covered by God, and today I walk in victory. Say it. Declare it. Let it be the first step of standing. And now, let me pray for you. Not a polished prayer. Not a sermon wrapped in religious language. Just a real prayer, from someone who's been in the trenches, for someone who might be in the trenches right now. Lord, I come to you not as someone who has it together, but as someone who's tired. I'm not asking you to remove every problem, I'm asking you to let Lord, I come to you not as someone who has it together, but as someone who's tired. I'm not asking you to remove every problem, I'm asking you to let me know you're with me in the middle of them. Right now, I lift up one mother who hasn't left her daughter's hospital room in 3 days. The beeping monitors have become the soundtrack of her prayers. She's running on cold coffee and whispered please, watching her little girl sleep through another round of treatment. Let her feel your hand on her shoulder, not as a vague hope, but as a weight she can actually sense. When the doctor's words sounded like a sentence instead of a plan, she kept nodding, but inside she was crumbling. Meet her in that cracked open place. Replace the fear clawing at her chest with a peace that doesn't make sense given the circumstances. Remind her that you count every tear she blinks back when she has to be strong. We reject the lie that she's alone in that chair. We reject the lie that this diagnosis is bigger than you. We agree with the truth that your presence fills that room more fully than the antiseptic smell or the uncertainty hanging in the air. Your word, no weapon formed against us will succeed. Amen. Here's what I want you to remember as you go about your day. You are not walking out that door alone. There is a God who goes before you, who walks beside you, and who has your back. The pressure does not have final authority over your life. So when fear whispers loudest, pause and whisper this, Lord, I trust you are already in my next moment. Then take one small step forward, open the email, make the call, walk into that room, and watch how His peace meets you there. What is one ordinary step you can take today that says, I believe you are with me?